man over there does it all. And we're very blessed to have a veteran, a patriot, a pastor, kids caregiver, taker care of everything in here that is going to share with us today for Labor Day. So if you would, please stand and let's welcome Pastor Dan as he brings the message today.
That's okay. I'm not a drinking man, Sally. It's okay. Simon and I were back there, and he goes, do you want me to just put on some music when they take the offering or video? And they go, hey, can we find a video that I've been working on the railroad? And Simon kind of looked at me, and he goes, yeah, I guess so. I go, well, you may not think it's spiritual, but this is Labor Day weekend. And I think if there's one thing that the good Lord wants us all to understand, it's that hard work is scriptural. So all of you that want your free college, yeah, spoken as a true college parent, there's nothing free about it. I want to talk to you about Labor Day. Last Sunday, pastor asked me, he says, hey, will you speak next Sunday? I said, sure. It's Labor Day. Then I went home, like all of us do when we get an opportunity to speak. You start praying really hard because you have no idea what to say. And you just wait for God to dump something in your head. So I thought, well, maybe I ought to look up how it all got started. So in the 1880s, there was a movement, and some of the states started adopting Labor Day as an official holiday. And in 1894, the McGuire brothers, and they argued about which one was really accredited with it, but they were the McGuire brothers. And this is what they did. Nationwide, we passed Labor Day as an official holiday. And this was the proclamation. Then the nation pays tribute on Labor Day to the creator of so much of the nation's strength, prosperity, and well-being, the American worker. Now, I might take issue with that because I'm not sure it was totally the American worker who was the creator of so much of the nation's strength, prosperity, and well-being. I think they were just tapping into something. And what they were tapping into is the principles of God that established this nation. God established this nation to be strong and prosperous and well-being. And the workers were just tapping in. So I got to thinking, 1894. We didn't even have roads like we know them today. We didn't have airplanes. We didn't have cars. We certainly didn't have microwaves, so you guys wouldn't have been able to eat. Okay? Well, yeah, if you could get in a microwave, what good is it, right? We didn't have television. We didn't have computers. We didn't have any of that stuff. 1894, they were working on the railroad. They were pounding steaks by hand. They didn't even have power saws. You had to do that manual thing. Or Snicker bars. Yeah, none of that stuff was invented. So I thought, okay, what were they honoring? What were these guys doing that these people recognized that they wanted to pay such tribute to them? And I have to give a shout out to my sister. She called me last night, or she texted me. She was trying to figure out how to watch this on the internet. Now, I love my sister. She's just not the most tech-savvy person, so I hope you figured it out, Linda. So I tried to figure out, okay, let me go back and examine somebody I know that grew up right after that era. None of us were here in 1894. Neil, you weren't here in 1894, were you? Okay. Well, you were the oldest one on the stage, buddy. I just wanted to, okay. But anyway, in 1890, so I went to August the 18th, 1909. Okay? Now, that day may not mean anything to you. But on August the 18th, 1909, a guy named Sigmund Frank Marcinkowski, and we called him Ziggy, Ziggy was born. Now, we called him Ziggy because other than Freud, I don't know anybody who was called Sigmund, okay? It's not a popular name today. So if you guys start to have children, and when you get to be married and adult, you've got to follow the progress. When you get married and, you're an adult and then you get married, then you have children, Sigmund's not a real common name, okay? So if you want your kid to be really standing out in school, you can name him Sigmund. Okay. It's August the 18th, 1909, and my dad, Ziggy, is born in New York, I think. We're not real sure about all of Ziggy's past because it's kind of obscure. But he's born, and his biological father dies soon after that. We're not sure exactly what year. But his mother, because in those days, a single parent, single woman, you just didn't make it. So she remarries. And we're never been quite sure what his stepdad's name was. So, but what we do know is that he had an older brother, Chester. And Chester and Ziggy called their stepdad Blackie. Now, he wasn't black. Interracial marriage in the early 1900s wasn't real popular. But we think it had I don't know what it had to do with, but they named him Blackie. And I remember hearing these stories because actually the first dog we got when we were kids, we called Blackie. He was a brown dog, but I guess it was just because we'd heard so many stories about my dad's stepdad that we named our dog Blackie. Now, this is a story. It's going somewhere. Stay with me. I'm telling you a story about Labor Day. And so my grandmother, I think her first name was Mary, not sure. And whatever Blackie's name was, somebody said it was Karlowski. All the Polacks stayed together. Marcinkowskis, Karlowskis, all that. So, Dad's growing up. He's in school. He's 11 years old. 1920 rolls around. Something happened in 1920. Anybody know what it was? You're right. Prohibition started. Prohibition starts. The country decides, I just threw that in. Not that you're a drinker. I just thought I'd throw that in. I was just throwing it in. So prohibition starts. We decide that we are going to impose godly values on America. And liquor is outlawed. Now, the people of this country don't really handle restrictions real well. You figured that out, right? Even if they're good restrictions, we don't handle it too well. So prohibition starts. And people start bootlegging. That's not a stocking that goes in your boot. They start bootlegging. They start making these speakeasies, and they start making booze on the slide, okay? So my dad, being 11 years old, goes to work for his stepfather, who I'm not exactly sure where it all happened, but as I understand it, they were in the process of somehow manufacturing this bootlegging speakeasy process. Well, when Ziggy gets to be about 13, now 11 years old, are you guys with this? 11 years old, you're busting it, okay? Working for your dad in some illegal process, okay. But around 13, Ziggy doesn't really like his stepdad and they're not getting along well. He leaves home and he runs away. And he runs away to Chi-Town, which is Chicago. And what's that breaker thing they do, the CB radio thing? The truckers call it Chi-Town. He goes to Chi-Town. And he gets a job at 13. And his job is washing elephants in the circus. Maya, remember I told you I was going to get to the circus? He washes up. He's 13, okay? Who's 13? Raise your hand. She's 14. Who's 13? You're 13? Okay. Could you imagine at 13, your job is to run away from home, not see your parents anymore, and you go to work for the circus and you wash elephants? Sounds exciting, doesn't it? No. Okay? It's like, and they didn't have iPads to listen or earphones or anything. They just had to like wash elephants. So my dad And washing elephants is hard work. Because if you mess up, it could be fatal, okay? So washing elephants is hard work. So he works at the circus in Chicago. And he does that for a few years. And I'm not sure if it's a natural progression in circus. Anybody ever work in the circus? No circus workers. Thought I'd check. I'm not sure if it's a natural progression or not, but he works his way up to being a cook. I don't know how you get there from elephant washing, but you do. It's got to be better than elephant washing, okay? So now he's a cook with the circus. And the circus is making its way back to New York. And they stop in a town called Plattsburgh. Plattsburgh, New York, which was the home of Plattsburgh Air Force Base until 1995 when they went through the base closures and they closed Plattsburgh. Plattsburgh was the oldest military installation in the United States. And you can see what they called, it says the old post. No, back up. The old post right there, the old post cemetery, a little small cemetery, and there's people buried in there from, I think it starts in like 1812. And runs way up through. The interesting thing was in 1974, I was assigned to Plattsburgh Air Force Base. That's kind of interesting. And so Dad is in Plattsburgh as a cook, and he's working in, since this thing's been around since 1812, it was around during Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Rider days. And they had a camp there. And some of the men that worked at that camp were actually part of the Cuban invasion and the Spanish-American War and all that stuff that took place. So my dad ends up being a cook at that camp. Somehow, and we're not sure of all the details, he works his way back to Syracuse, New York, where he gets a job working for the R.E. Dietz Lantern Company. Now you can go. This is what the factory looked like in Syracuse, New York. We used to drop my dad off over on the right-hand side over there where there was a doorway. And what R.E. Dietz does, R.E. Dietz made lanterns. Every lantern you see out there, those old kerosene burning lanterns, and now they're electric. They make lanterns, and they made those blinking lights you see on the road hazard, the sawhorses alongside the road, and the yellow light blinks at you. And they also made early on the bubbles on police cars and things like that. So he made that. So he's working away at Dietz Lantern, and he meets this young lady. My father was a confirmed bachelor. He said, I'm never going to get married. Too much work. It's Labor Day. Too much work. So he meets this woman named Dorothy Frances Fuller. And Dorothy Frances Fuller, in November of 1941, marries Sigmund Frank Marcinkowski. Hence starts the Marcinkowski household. And that's where all that Frank and Francis come. My sister is Linda Francis. I'm Daniel Frank, whatever that's worth. But this is actually their wedding picture. We had it recolored because they didn't actually do color photography in 1941. If they did, you couldn't afford it. So 1941, they're married. It's 2 or 3 weeks before December the 7th, 1941, which is Pearl Harbor. The U.S. is attacked by the Japanese in Pearl Harbor, and hopefully the rest of history, you know at least a little bit about it. Now, they don't take my dad in the war because he had punctured eardrums. And I think part of the problem with his ears was he used to clean the wax out of his ear with a wooden match. It was the way it was. Q-tips were too expensive if they even had them in 41. I don't know. So, yeah, your dad did too, right? Yeah, you get the match pick and you dig wax out of your ear. Okay. 41, Dad doesn't go in the military. They're married. They make it through the war years. The war ends in 45. In 1947, they have their first child, which was my sister, who's not nearly as nice as I am. But 1947, my sister Linda's born. 1949, I am born. Now, what my dad does at R.E. Dietz Lantern Company is he runs a punch press. Okay? And you see this giant machine right here? Oh, about where the word punch press is in that platform underneath there, what they did was they shoved these pieces of metal that were stamped for the lanterns out under this thing. And in the 1950s, they got paid piecework. So every piece they put underneath there, they got paid a certain amount of money. So if you could beat the press and get 2 pieces for 1 punch, you would make twice as much money. It makes sense, right? So in the early 1950s, we were doing pretty good. Now, we didn't have a car or anything yet, but we were doing okay. Every day, my dad would get up around 4:30 in the morning, and he would walk to work. Now, we lived in Syracuse, New York. Have you ever been to Syracuse, New York? Have you ever been outside of the South? Any of you from the North? You from the North? Okay. Syracuse, New York. Let me give you a picture for your mind of Syracuse, New York, walking to work, which he walked from our house to Wilkerson Street, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 miles, maybe further. I don't know. I never walked it. But let me give you a snapshot of what Syracuse, New York in the winter is like. Okay. Syracuse, New York in the winter. That thing hanging off the roof, by the way, is an icicle, okay? And the lady standing there freezing in that down parka is my wife. And those snowdrifts, that's what Syracuse looks like in the winter. Every morning at 4:30, my father would get up and stomp through the house, waking most of us up, and he would walk to work. When it was really, really cold, 20, 30 below zero, he'd walk to this diner and get coffee, and somebody'd pick him up and carry him the rest of the way. Along around 1958, I don't remember the exact year, I was still pretty young. Around 1958-ish, I think I was like 9 years old. 1958. Don't go making me older than I am. My dad's working the punch press, and he's making pretty good money because he's beating the press. Well, one day he doesn't get his hand out in time. The press comes down. My father was left-handed. The press takes off these 2 fingers on his left hand. They take Ziggy to the hospital. My father only feared one thing in life, and it was needles. He'd pass out cold seeing a needle. He didn't like shots. And he didn't go to hospitals. And they didn't do doctors in hospitals. If you had a headache in those days, you just worked. If you didn't feel good, well, you just worked. Well, if you were sick, you got a bucket next to your station and you worked. That's just the way it was. I don't ever remember my father taking a day off. Ever taking a day off. Working in the factory. That was work. 4-letter word. Work. Okay. He loses these 2 fingers. They take him to the hospital. They knock him out so they can sew his fingers. They sew up his fingers. They put him in a room. You know what my dad did when he woke up? Got up, he got dressed, and he walked back to the hotel, the Victor Hotel. My aunt owned it. We called her, let's see, that was Chacha Julia. The Polacks call him Chacha. Chacha means aunt. He walks back to the hotel where my mother worked because he wasn't going to stay in that hospital because he had to go to work the next day. Okay, now follow that, okay? Can I get a volunteer? I want to cut some of these fingers off. Okay. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? You've lost 2 fingers. You've walked back to the hotel. You pass out because of, probably the shock you're in. And he's worried about going to work the next day. Now, he's left-handed. He can no longer work the punch press. But the thought of quitting work or finding some welfare program doesn't even enter into the equation. There is no way he's going to do that. So there was a union, I don't know what it was called, but some union they belonged to. So my dad now takes a job as the janitor at the R.E. Dietz factory, sweeping the floors and making coffee. There was never nobody ever said, oh, poor Ziggy, never felt sorry for himself. He got up every morning and walked to work. We never knew the difference as kids. And from that 1958 or whatever it was until December of 1974. In 1974, December of 74, Ziggy passes away just before Christmas. 65 years old. He turned 65 in August, and he was going to retire. But, let me back up a little bit. See, because he lost 2 fingers, he couldn't even write anymore, couldn't sign his name or anything. But because I was backing up. Where was I backing up to? Do you remember? I was backing up. Yeah, but, I think I remember where I was backing up to. But he stayed on, okay? And instead of retiring in August, I know where I was going. When he lost his fingers, right? Now, you would think if it was 2016 and you worked a job that had no safety shield, no safety equipment, no anything on that press, and you lost 2 fingers, you would own R.E. Dietz, wouldn't you? Right? Well, in the 1950s, the way it worked was they gave my dad a whopping cash settlement of $7,000 for his 2 fingers. And they probably paid the hospital bill out of the kindness of their heart. Could you imagine that? I've given you a piece of equipment that's unsafe and you've cut your hands off, and I give you $7,000. And you're going to spend the rest of your life basically without the function of writing or anything. But he makes $7,000. We capitalize on that, and we buy a house. We move out of the flat we lived in, and we bought a house. Then I fast forward back to August of 74. Dad doesn't retire because the union's in negotiations for better retirement benefits. So he's still employed, if you will, when he passes away in December of 74. Because he was still employed, and I don't remember the exact, but I think because he was still employed, at his death, my mother got $750. Which, believe it or not, and my sister told me the other day that she just found the bill from my dad's funeral. We bought a casket. We had a 3-day wake. Does everybody know what a wake is? Sometimes they call them a showing. Yeah, they put your casket up and people come and visit. It took 3 days because so many people came to visit Ziggy's funeral. The janitor at the R.E. Dietz Company. We bought a casket. We did a 3-day wake. We did the funeral, the plot, the cemetery, the limo, and the whole cha-cha, $600. You know, you can't pick up the phone and talk to the mortuary for $600 today, okay? Okay, my story. Outside of our family, nobody knows who Ziggy Marcinkowski is. He didn't invent nothing great. He's not known for great accomplishments. He didn't write any books. He didn't do anything that the world might say this was a great man or notoriety or anything like that. All he did from 1920 until 1974 was work hard. And I look back at this, and what did they really mean in 1894 about establishing the strength and the prosperity? They weren't talking about the men who were swinging the hammers in 1894. They were talking about the next generation to come. See, what Ziggy Marcinkowski did was he laid a foundation. He built a platform. And a platform for what? A platform for those who were going to follow on the Marcinkowski household. See, and I do believe I work hard. And I've always worked hard. Why? Because the platform was established. We're talking about Labor Day. And all of us, we should be building platforms for the next generation to have something to stand on and hold on to that's going to carry them into their next generation and next generation. I know people that work hard. I know Larry works hard. I've seen it. I know you worked hard for years and decades. I know that Blair works hard. I've seen him down at Chick-fil-A. Where is he? I've seen him down at Chick-fil-A. Even though he came in late and kind of entered down through here like a Hollywood star waving at everybody, it's okay. I just want you to know we saw that. But he works hard at Chick-fil-A. And you think, well, Chick-fil-A, big deal. You know, they sling out chicken sandwiches to everybody. No, it's not about chicken sandwiches. It's about the foundation that you were on, that you went to work with. And what you're demonstrating is not your ability to sell chicken sandwiches, is that your ability is to be a man of God. Those that bust it, those that work hard, irregardless of the circumstances, those that do whatever it takes, those are qualities of God. If you go back and look at Jesus Christ, his early years, there's not a lot written about his early years. Why? Because he was working. You know, he's pounding nails. They didn't have electric saws back in those days. I'm not even sure what their hammers look like. And you say, well, wait a minute. I'm in school. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to work yet. You know what? You are. You've probably got the hardest working job there is. You're in school. What other responsibilities do you have? You don't have a family yet. You don't have to pay the bills. I think mom's keeping the lights on and dad, and there's food in the refrigerator, right? Okay? You're in school. You want to know what your working hard job is? You should never be late on an assignment. You should never be late in your homework. You should never miss a day of school. Don't give me that, I think I feel sick this morning. Okay? Get your raggedy self out of bed and go to your job. Your job is to become smart. And I told you guys last week when I came up there, if you, and the kids all today want to be different. Okay? And I told these guys, look, getting tattoos don't make you different no more. Everybody's got a tattoo. I mean, it's like they're a dime a dozen. Putting hockey pucks in your ear don't make you different. Okay? It just don't. What makes you different is to go into your school and be the best student you can be, always on time with your assignment, always doing the right thing, and standing up for what you believe in the Word of God. Being a man or a woman of God and walking it and talking it and preaching in your school will make you different. You will get a lot more people who don't like you doing that than putting bones in your nose. I guarantee it. I saw that on the Discovery Channel. They put a bone in their nose. Okay. Labor Day. You know, I hate the fact that we have the welfare system we have. I believe the welfare system should be the church. And we should be taking care of people and equipping them to be self-sufficient. It should, you know, your resume should not be a career of being on welfare. Now, I understand when there's times you may need it, and that's great, and that's why it's there. But I think that's what the church was designed to be, not the federal government. Because what we ought to be doing is you need some help. You hit hard times. Understand that. Great. Come on in. Now we sit down. What skills do you have? How can we retrain you? What can we do to put you back out in the workforce? Because if you don't work, you don't have any self-worth. When you're not doing the best of the best you can do, you just don't care anymore. That's how you get that lackadaisical attitude. When you wait till midnight the night before because you got to build a sugar cube castle and you spring it on your parents, you know, there's no place at midnight. Oh, Walmart's open 24-hour now, isn't it? You can buy sugar cubes, okay? Labor Day is what's the platform that we're building for the next generation, the next generation, the next generation. And working hard shouldn't be something we run from. It ought to be something we run toward. You know, there's a thing going around South Walton High School. I don't know if it's in all the schools or not, but I know it's kind of that underlying whisper in South Walton that if you got a job or you got work and you got to do things, you're kind of looked down upon. Because your parents aren't rich enough to send you to college. Well, even if your parents are rich enough to send you to college and you just take the free ride, you're robbing yourself. And your parents are fools. Not foolish. Okay, I shouldn't call anybody a fool. That's foolish. Because if I can afford to send you to school, then praise God, then you know what your job is? You ought to be a straight A student. Because you ain't got nothing else to do but study. You know? Get your eyes off that cute little thing over there in the third row in the second seat back. You're there to study. You ain't there to find your next mate. Come on. You got a job. It's your schoolwork. We got a job, all of us. And part of it is preparing them for their job. Just the sheer fact that we're about to run out of retirement money in this country is stupid. We've paid enough money into it. Now, if we could get the politicians to quit stealing our money, we'd be all right. But you know what? If you work hard, somewhere it ought to be there. Either you've built a retirement plan, you got just as much responsibility to have that plan as anything else, and we should all retire with dignity. We're not working smart if we don't. So I said all that in my Labor Day message. 1 Corinthians lays it out, 15:58. Here's what it says. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord. If you got a job, you're doing the work of the Lord. I don't care if it's Chick-fil-A, which I really like their Cobb salad, by the way. I don't care if it's Chick-fil-A. I don't care if it's R.E. Dietz. When you go to work and you give them 100%, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter how you feel about it, whether you like the company or not, they're paying you your salary. You go in there and you give them 100%, you are working for the Lord. If you're cutting hair and you're doing 100% of your job, you're working for the Lord, whether they realize it or not, because you know that your labor to the Lord is not in vain. When we go out there, no matter what our jobs are, and we do it with full dedication, full vim and vigor and passion, then the prosperity and the wellness and the security of this nation will be maintained. The greatest threat that we in this nation, our greatest threat isn't ISIS. Our greatest threat is not terrorism. It's noise level. Our greatest threat is that when we lose this, when we lose what it means to work for the Lord and labor for the Lord, and you see it happening all over the place when everybody wants a free ride for everything and nobody wants to go, and everybody's condemning, and we're all 16 million people out in the streets. Socialism is wonderful, and free medicine and free school and free whatever, okay? That's the threat to America, because we're losing the principles that God laid down the foundation of. Don't you ever, you want to be different, then work as hard as you know how to work and then give it 10 more %. That's what we, the church, ought to be known for. In fact, instead of, like you're a Christian when you go in for that job interview and the guy kind of rolls his eyes and thinks, who's next? They ought to be calling the church when they got a job opening at their business, saying, who you got that needs a job? That's what we, the church, ought to be. Who you got that knows how to work like that? Because everything they do is unto the Lord. So therefore, everything you do is unto the Lord. You're going to be the best of the best employee. I think Sharon threw this cap at me. I'm not sure. All right, Chuck threw it at me. That's my story. You see, my dad, of course, as you get older, when you're younger, you think your parents don't know anything. But You know, the older you get, the smarter your parents become. And then they are childlike on the front row. I truly believe I am who I am today because of my parents. And because of the platform that they built and instilled in my sister and I. They didn't have to say, we're teaching you how to work hard. You don't have to say that. The best thing you can do is role model it out. When they see us willing to do whatever it takes, not just in our job, but in our lives, in our walk with the Lord, it'll click at some point in time. I'm going to get you out early because that's the only story I had for Labor Day. But here's what I would like to do. We always take an offering for whoever speaks. And, you know, I always come up with something. I always come up with some way of taking the offering and blessing somebody else. You guys got the offering last time. You don't get it this time. So just don't get too excited. Your job is to go to work, okay? So you got some money to give to the offering. Okay. We're going to take an offering, but here's what I'm going to do. And I prayed about this. And here's what the Lord dumped in my head. I'm going to take whatever we get on this offering. I'm going to take it, and I'm going out tomorrow in the name of this church. And we frequent a couple of restaurants all the time in this area. So we're going to go out to breakfast, and we're going to go out to lunch. And then we are going to take whatever we get in this offering, and we are going to bless the socks off somebody who's working on Labor Day in a fairly menial job. So I'm going to find that server, and I'm hoping that I just want to see the look on their face when I leave that $250 tip for my ham and cheese omelet. Yeah, the donut hole, yeah. You know, going to get my cup of coffee and leave $200 tip or whatever it is. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a chance to give. The rules are the same. If you're going to write a check, just write it out to the church or VCCR or whatever it is. If you're going to give cash, somebody will give you an envelope. You just got to raise your hand up. And Rick, who's a hardworking man, is a carpenter right there. And, you know, I'll show you how it works since I see Rick right here. This guy works hard. I know he does because I've done some work. Well, I watched him do some work. I didn't do it with him. I watched him do some work one time. And he works hard. And he's got the most organized shop van I've ever seen in my life. But his son is a United States Marine. How does that happen? Where does he get that passion? Because he laid the foundation. He built the platform. And I get Tyler probably doesn't even recognize it now, but someday he will, is that he's the way he is because of the man his dad was. Praise God. Okay, that's the offering. Throw some money in the bucket or whatever they got there to pass us down. And we're going to go out as Vision Church, and we're going to bless somebody in this neighborhood. Please go out and have a wonderful Labor Day tomorrow. Barbecue, if you will, or whatever we do on Labor Day. Don't forget the men and women that have worked tirelessly to give us what we have today. Don't forget the men and women in the military that work every single day to give us the freedoms that we have in this great nation. And you guys, everybody, you've had 4 days off, those local schools. I'm going to ask everyone, there should not be a homework assignment that isn't done. You've had 4 days off. Tyler Mitchum, do your job. Do your job. Thank you. 5 days off. Holy Toledo, 5 days off. You ought to be caught up on next week's assignments. What? Well, I know. You guys didn't get it off? I'm sorry. You're home for the weekend. Did you just go work done? Okay. Praise God.
Yep. All right. Let's give Pastor Dan a big hand for that, huh? A couple quick announcements. If anybody wants prayer, we'll have prayer teams down here at the front. You can come down here. And also, I'm going to help a male out in this audience today. I have a wedding ring somebody lost. Gentlemen, you want to check your hands real quick? Because somebody's going to be in trouble when they get home.
Offering, it's like Old Testament.
Nobody here is going to fess up to losing a wedding ring? It is silver, but I think that's a little awful small for David's hand. You can check it. Here, see, that's his. Yep. God bless you. Praise God. Thank you, Father. So have a blessed day. Pastor Dan said go to lunch. Prison ministry meeting in the back. Jim, Elijah room? Somewhere. Find the prison ministry wherever they are. Bless you guys.
There's got to be more than going back and forth.